What is wrong with me?
No. So funny.
Welcome to the Backpack Show. This Friday, we are filled with authors. Who'd have thunk it? Authors. Man, we have...
It happened completely by accident, too. We booked them separately, and Mike's actually moved days. So this wasn't like planned. It just worked out this way. But I'm very, very excited about it.
You know, we try to make some alchemy happen that we don't really know what's going to be the connecting tissue. In this case, we truly know the connecting tissue. We have author Barry Eisenberg, who's written a thriller, Primal Calling. That
Debut
book is
novel.
Debut novel. It's out there. It's all about a lie told at the beginning of life that changes everything. And we have Mike Freeman, who's written a bunch of books, but most recently he's written all about the scenario out there in the world of protesting in sports and football's fearless activists. Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed, Kenny Stills, and all the other athletes stood up to the NFL and President Trump. An important book, dangerous book, but one we're going to get into. Backpack Show.
I was just like, you never interrupt me anymore. And then you did. So now I feel like my world's like rebalanced.
I forgot to tell the guys that. I forgot to say that we...
oh, your dad's here. This is
fun. It's my biological father, Stephen Brogan. Hey, Dad. You know why I'm saying that? Because Barry Eisenberg's book makes you think some things. That's why I'm saying that. You suddenly have this feeling of like, what's real, what's not real.
This is fun. So you can bond over your dad and Barry can bond over having kids they're super proud of.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Michelle's decided today's going to be a good day. I have to agree.
It's going to be the best day we've ever had today so far. It's going to be good. Fred Faulkner, the fourth come.
There's an author name if I ever heard one.
Still waiting for Fred Faulkner, the fourth to show. I think we should bring in Barry Eisenberg and we should talk and see what we can learn about all things Primal. John's here again today. Hey, John, good to see you. John's back for his second or third visit now. I don't know.
Hi, John. Welcome.
Don't call it a comeback. All right, here we go. I almost pushed the absolute wrong button. Barry Eisenberg, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, guys. I'm fine. Thanks so much for having me. How are you?
So best good.
Day of my life.
The best day of your life. It's all downhill from here then?
You never know. Like I just figured if I die already today, then I'm going to be gone. So,
okay.
So Barry, I have questions. You're an associate professor of healthcare management.
Yes.
This debut novel, nothing to do with healthcare management, but some of the characters work in healthcare. So how do we jump from teaching healthcare management to writing a thriller?
Yeah, God only knows I'm still asking myself that question. But you're right. It's sort of light years away in terms of the writing that I've always done, because what I've always focused on is healthcare management, higher ed. And how I got to this, it was sort of a strange happenstance. So I was driving home from work one day, and I caught the very end of a news story on the radio. And it was about a young guy, like a kid, a teenager, who had been searching for his father, never found him, and along the way there were some mysteries that came along, and it was really very intriguing. And I thought, I'm going to just try my hand at writing a short story about this, and so I did. But as I started writing, it started getting more and more and more, and sort of evolved into a first draft of a novel, which I then put away for for a few months. Took it out again and read it, and really read it as though I was reading something that somebody else had written. And it required a fair amount of editing and giving sort of texture and shape to the characters and enhancing all the plots. So the second part of writing it, which is really the second phase, was as interesting and as challenging as the first. But anyway, that's how it sort of came about. And when you say that there are characters who work in healthcare, and there are, because that's sort of the familiar base for me. But that's certainly not the essence of the story. The story really is about family. It's about a young man who discovers, you're right, the big lie. He discovers that he has a father who is actually a person he had always been told by his mom that he was the the product of an artificial insemination at a time in her life when she wanted to have a child. And it seemed like the most convenient and easy way to accomplish that.
That was not true, as it turns out.
It's not true, yeah. And he discovers that it was a real person, and he embarks on a very lengthy, pursuit to find out who his father is.
No spoilers, but it's a very sensational journey. He does not find out that his dad's like a pharmacist.
Yeah, no, he didn't. He wasn't the guy next door or anything that was a pharmacist. Yeah.
No, I do have a question.
Mystery, there's a lot of mystery around the death.
I don't want to spoil things, Barry, but there's definitely, like, you can tell that there are details in the book that come from you directly, because it's like set kind of where you live-ish. And there's a lot in healthcare, which you're very familiar with, but it's equally as detailed when you start getting into some areas that most of us wouldn't have personal experience with. So, without giving anything away, how do you manage to get so immersed in something with which you have no personal experience and make it come alive for people?
Well, I don't know. It's a combination of imagination, which I never knew I had. Many people will still claim that I don't, but that aside. But also a fair amount of research. I think in order to be to sort of honor the integrity of readers, you really have to immerse yourself in research so that you know what you're talking about. There's the young man in the book who is searching for his father and encounters mystery after mystery. Excuse me. Is all of a sudden involved in international intrigue. There's there's a lot of plot twists and all that, and in order to make that right, you have to do the hard work. There's no substitute for that, and that involves a fair amount of research, looking into areas that I had not been familiar with, including what different government agencies do, and just international relationships.
Did your kids read the book?
They not only read it, but they were also very helpful and occasionally critical about when they read it. But I have to say, my whole family has just been incredibly, incredibly helpful in giving feedback, in helping to sort of shape the direction of the book, helping to sort of give flavor to the characters. Honestly, I don't know that I could have done it without them.
Michelle says there's a lot of rabbit holes you can end up going down while you're doing research like that.
Oh, I've discovered a lot of rabbit holes. I've been digging my way out of them for the last few years while this has been in the editing stage.
You have to do the hard work.
Interesting time to point out one little detail that we hadn't quite touched on just yet. You have a couple of really great kids. You have some really interesting and thoughtful kids, but one of them might have been a little critical because he also tends to, get involved in being inside other people's heads a little bit. You, amongst other things like running hospitals, being a professor and all that, you also happen to be the dad of a famous movie actor, Jesse Eisenberg, which we don't bring these things up. We had Mr. T's daughter on, but she's a comedian and a school teacher. And she, there's not a lot of Mr. T in her life as much as you'd want there to be. You'd want great stories of him, like ripping cereal boxes in half in her childhood.
Mr. T cereal, obviously.
Mr. T cereal, right.
So have you already optioned the film rights for this so that Jesse can play one of the roles?
I hadn't thought about that.
I'm still waiting for the check, but we'll see.
But is it different? Because I would think that, I think all your kids probably had some really good input, but is it different because of how he works in that space to inhabit other people and all that? Did he give you, and then what do you do? Because you want to stay true to your author vision, but you also want to honor, the body of learning he's had.
Sure. Jesse has been just an extraordinary help all throughout the way, but sometimes it's not necessarily direct. Jesse, in addition to being an actor, it also has a pretty accomplished background as a writer and a playwright. He's written a couple of books.
That's even worse. That's even worse for you, Barry.
Well, but I didn't, when I first wrote this, I didn't have a sense that this is going to be out there and be published. I sort of wrote it as a challenge to myself to see if I can work or do something in an area that was a little different from what I ordinarily do and how I ordinarily work. Because writing fiction is, at least for me, and I can't speak for other authors, but it is entirely different from writing nonfiction. And I'll get to Jesse in just a second, but while I'm on that, every time I've written something in nonfiction, I had a real defined sense of where it's going to go. I knew what the writing objectives were. I knew what the outcome was going to be. I knew what the points were that I was going to make. And I had a fairly detailed outline of how it would progress from the beginning right up until the end. There's something, at least again for me, something very different about having written a work of fiction. It meanders. It takes shape and a life of its own. I'm always reminded what the great Jim Lehrer said. I once heard him in an interview, and they asked him, well, "How do you write? He wrote book after book after book," and it seemed to come with ease. And he said that he gets up every day. He starts writing at about 6 or 7 in the morning until about maybe 10, and he says, and he writes 20 pages every day. He says the thing is, he has no idea what those 20 pages are going to be. And I could really relate to that because there's something about the work that's developing as you write it. There's something about the characters growing as you give them life. So it was a very different experience, and I wanted to challenge myself that way. And I'm only saying that because I wasn't, I didn't write this necessarily with the idea that it's going to be out there on a bookshelf one day. That it is wonderful, and it's icing on the cake. In terms of Jesse, back to the question, I have learned so much from him, from his writing. He's written, in addition to the books, and he's written, tons of stuff for the New Yorker, and for other magazines and online vehicles, and he's also written 4 plays that have been produced in New York, and as well as in other places around the world. And what I really have come to admire about his writing, and what I've learned so much from him, is he's able to sort of pull you into the most vulnerable spot of a character, to where you can see sort of the genesis of their pain, if that's what it is, or their regret, or something that becomes so central to what motivates them to act in the ways that they do. And I think I've learned more from him than from any other writer I've ever read. Part of that is because I get to talk to him about it and learn, so I have that additional benefit of learning from it that way. But it's been just an absolute joy to be able to sort of get that from him.
Isn't that disconcerting, though, to not? So in healthcare, an uncertain outcome is bad. And now you're sitting down every day with no idea what's coming next in your own book.
Yeah. That would not be a good attitude to bring to my professional role. I don't know what the outcome is going to be.
I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, take it.
So this book came out recently. I mean, last month. Yeah. So as an author myself, and we have Mike Freeman coming on a little later, releasing a book during a pandemic is so fun. You don't get to do book tours. You don't get to do a lot of in-person press. You get to do, Zoom calls by the fireplace and that sort of a thing. It's a different gig. How did you approach that? What are you doing to promote the book? What's the plan? And I know your daughter Hallie is getting that out there.
Right. Yeah. My daughter Hallie, who, by the way, has been, just to give a shout out to her, she has been just incredibly helpful in terms of, helping to manage the promotion, but having done editing, having been the liaison to the publishers. But to the question, so the pandemic, just in an emotional way, casts a pall on it because we all are relatively confined and isolated, and it would be wonderful to be able to connect more in person. But on the other hand, just given the nature of the circumstances, we're also able to reach a more expansive audience electronically. And there's some, I never want to say there's some benefit or silver lining, because God only knows this is the most horrendous thing that we've all ever experienced. But just given that these are the circumstances that we're in, being able to reach maybe lots more people through these electronic means has been beneficial. The publisher and a publicist that we're working with, Fauzia and Michelle, are just. They are dogged. They are just wonderfully creative. Sorry?
They're my favorite publicists.
Yeah. the kindest and most creative people I've worked with in a long time.
I
So you have
forgot this
three
is a
kids.
Fausia person.
It is a Fausia person. So you have 3 kids, and did they all get the acting bug, or was it just the one?
Well, they're all involved in the arts. My
Parenting tips.
my my oldest daughter had an acting school for several years. She also acted, and she's also an artist. Our house is adorned with her work, so it's nice to kind of feel her presence all the time. I mentioned Jesse, our younger. Hi, Fausia. Our younger daughter, Hallie, she works in the music industry in licensing area, but she also acted when she was young as well. None of them got the acting bug nor talent from me. That came. It's 100% from my wife, Amy.
It's a beautiful
So you
thing.
just encouraged it.
Yeah, well,
I sat on the side. My role was to stay out of the way, I think, and that's.
It's significant work, though.
I mean,
so when your kids
encourage
want
it.
to act, you're not like a passive observer of that. You have to actively facilitate it because they can't like go on their own auditions and stuff. You have to shuttle them around.
Yeah, and it's there's a lot to do for that. But I'd also want to mention it wasn't like a grand plan to somehow have them
like stage dad.
It's sort of no, it kind of like worked. It just it sort of worked its way. I mean, my the kids, my older ones were involved in a children's theater group when they were young. And, they enjoyed it. It was, sort of a hobby. At some point, Jesse, again, when he was very young, they asked him to do a singing role. And lo and behold, he was able to sing it just, beyond what we had anticipated. And that sort of opened a number of different doors for him, ultimately or eventually leading to professional opportunities. So that's how this sort of happened. It wasn't part of it. It was like I was writing the book. It wasn't there was no outcome that was predetermined or predestined.
John wants to know if you can talk about managing the creative difference between the big picture of the storyline in your book versus the detail within the story. Sounds like you didn't manage it at all. You just let it go.
Yeah, it's really a great question because part of the challenge, I think, for any author, and I say this as a relatively new author, at least in the sense of fiction, is how do you create enough context? How do you keep this notion of what the story is all about and not get so lost in detail that, that somehow that, I hate this phrase, but the bigger picture or the broader context somehow gets ignored. Things have to sort of plug in and connect to that. And, and that is a challenge. And I find that to be a really interesting thing to do. When you say managing it, I'm not sure that I had a necessarily conscious approach to doing it, but I was aware of it throughout the entirety of the writing process. And the other thing I would say is to also get feedback. Writing is a very isolated experience. We do it on our own. And so everybody has different comfort levels about how and when they reveal their material to somebody else. For me, I really appreciated the feedback that I got, not only from family, but from friends and from colleagues, some of whom had no concerns about the degree of bluntness with which they expressed their criticism. And so, thank you very much. And then you walk back forlorn.
Yeah. Pick up all your ego off the ground.
Were any people like, hey,
flattered on the sidewalk? There's nothing left.
They're like, she sounds like me. Do I really talk like that? Do anybody just see themselves in your characters? Get mad at you?
Right.
Barry Eisenberg, thank you so much for being part of the show today. And, people are going to have to run up and grab this book. You can go to cbrogan.me/Barry to get a quick, easy link right to it. cbrogan.me/Barry.
But Barry, don't go away.
Don't go away if you can. We'll have you back, a little bitty panel at the end. Woo! That is exciting. Mike Freeman's coming on next, but
yes,
did a lot of good chit chat, a lot of good interaction. It's I sense in Barry kind of a thoroughness and a detail kind of a guy, who by nature of doing a thriller had this opportunity to try to make himself let go, which is
yes,
a challenge.
but I think that detail serves him because when you're reading the story, at times things that would seem implausible, he gives you the detail into exactly how something happened. So you're like, oh, I guess it could,
I can see how that would work.
Yeah, it makes it believable. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, if you were the kind of person who wanted to get a Barry Eisenberg on your show, you need to make a show. So you're going to have to go to cbrogan.me/StreamYard. This is the technology we use to make this great show, and there's a lot of other people who can make it. It is so easy to use. Kerry turned me on to it. There's a whole only reason that there's a backpack show is because StreamYard exists. So cbrogan.me/StreamYard. Get your own damn show.
Get your own wonderful artistic and creative show
that
you have no idea where it's going, much like writing a debut thriller novel.
Now, unbidden to us, Barry promoted his promoter, which is good because that same company, FSB Associates, makes a really cool product called PubSite. You've done all the work like Barry to write your incredible, important novel. You want to have a site to promote it so that it could do the work while you're sleeping. Go to pub-site.com to make your own. It's super expensive. It's very difficult.
Stop it. It is not.
Oh.
It is not. There's a 14-day free trial. You can set your website up yourself. If you absolutely don't want to do that, they can do it for you. It is not expensive. It's just $19.99 a month to build a site on pub-site.com.
Do you know how much it costs? You know how much it costs to feed an actor before they're a real actor? Barry can't buy this thing. It's only $20 a month.
Feeding any adolescent is expensive, as I'm discovering.
3 kids too. That's a lot of school. Oof, that's a lot. Pub-site.com. Make your own show and then put your own damn book on your own damn website. This is a whole theory. I mean, if all I need is one more sponsor that makes sausages and I'd be good.
So John says, seems like an organic process writing a book rather than using an outline. Yeah, I absolutely don't think. It doesn't sound like Barry used an outline. It doesn't sound like outlining came anywhere near this.
I'd say there's some outline in it, but we'll see. I don't know. I know who does outline, because you can't be a sports writer and not have to collect your thoughts into interesting places and put some books together. I was going to drag another soul in to help us interview handsome Mike Freeman because, he knows a lot about the sports ball. And all I know is, he's written a very important book that transcends that.
Well, I'm sure there's someone in the comments who can help you out with any football knowledge that you like.
Mike Freeman, welcome. Thanks for being part of this today.
I got to tell you this very quick story that happened like 2 minutes before we get started. So
go.
As Barry's talking, right, I get a direct message from Jamie Eisenberg. Jamie Eisenberg is his nephew. Jamie Eisenberg is someone I used to work with who is also a writer. And Jamie Eisenberg writes for CBSSports.com, a really talented writer. He covers the fantasy football, the fantasy sports. He's also an analyst. It's crazy. It's just a small world. He DMs me while you guys are interviewing Barry. He DMs me. He's like, "That's my uncle." I was like,
"Oh my gosh!"
Does that mean Jamie is the cousin of Jesse? Am I doing the family thing right? Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's how that works.
Jamie could be like a second cousin. Barry's nodding in the back. In the back.
First cousin once removed. I don't know.
What a small world! It's crazy.
Here, hold on. Let's find out.
Let's bring Barry. Okay, fill us in, Barry.
Yes, yeah. Jamie is my nephew. Jamie is like seriously. I mean this in a very objective way. He's like a superstar in fantasy sports. He's got a CBS show, and the thing about Jamie that I both love and hate is that he makes me feel so inept as a male, because when he starts talking about sports, I realize that my knowledge base is so unbelievably limited. I just feel so tiny. But he's really brilliant. And yes, he's I'm just going to check the family tree and verify it. But yeah, he's Jesse's cousin, and they're very close.
Now you might as well stay while we talk to Mike, because if you know anything about football.
I'm kicking you back, Barry, but oh my gosh. By the way, though, we can't trust anything Barry says. He just wrote a book about people's birth certificates being wrong. So let's,
That's fair.
All right.
So there, it could be all a lie.
But in healthcare, you have to be scrupulously honest. So maybe he's just like sowing some wild oats or something. Because
Mike, that was quite what a connection, though. And funnier still that it's about fantasy sports, because I mean, I think that fantasy sports have really changed a lot in how to make sports more accessible.
Sandra says this is turning into a family show.
Yeah, it is. You're exactly right about fantasy sports. One of the things that fantasy sports has done, when they first started years ago, the leagues were very hesitant to be involved with them because they just thought they were just goofy and nerdy.
Right.
And they became really important to the leagues, to like the NFL, baseball, all those guys, because they bring in the casual sports fan. Obviously, there's a hardcore sports fan who's really into it, but they also bring in people who like think fantasy's fun. And so you put your fantasy team together and you got to watch to see how it does. Right. So it's a perfect comparison for leagues. And the leagues at first shunned this and thought it was just goofy and nerds. Now the leagues really love it because it generates so much more interest in their sports than they normally would have. Yeah.
So Kerry and I will have to give a precursor that we know marginally minimal about anything sports ball. So anything I say that sounds factual, you can say, no, that's absolutely not true.
Feel free to tell him he's wrong about the very basic elements.
Everything you say. No. I'm just going to say everything you say.
Okay. And I'll tell you, by the way, so
I did say I wanted alchemy, Chloe, and look how it just manifests.
It just happens. So one thing for sure, I'll give you one quick example of me not knowing sports ball. I'm at a Philadelphia Flyers game with this guy who owns a box because he's from this big tech company. And what I learned was that like all these people were kind of like partying in the box and not paying attention to the hockey. And the owner of the box is like the one guy like really watching the game. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to sit and watch the game with this guy because that's probably like a nice guy thing to do. Is like show him that I like the sports hockey. So I'm down there with him, and I've watched maybe 3 hockey games in my life. It's just not my sport. None of them are. But but I know nothing about it. And so we get to the end of third period, and he is like, you can see the joy. He's got this joy in his face, like, man, this guy just hung with me. He just watched this thing, and then he gets up, and I'm like, where are you going? And he goes, well, that's the end of the game. It's third period. And I went, thinking there's 4 like in every other sport in the world, and I saw his everything.
And you just lost all your
and he just walked up like this guy doesn't know anything, and it was the so listen.
I don't know jack about hockey either. So you and I are we're good. We're good.
Yeah, I mean, I just talked to a guy in Ottawa yesterday, and it was just that comment about we don't even know there still is hockey, but. Anyway, look, you wrote a book that's really important, and it's. I want to ask you so much about this book because Football's Fearless Activists covers all of the stuff going on with Colin Kaepernick, of course, as the poster child of this in NFL, but some of the other guys, Eric Reed, Kenny Stills, and what that really means. And my first question, though, is that when you write a book like this, you're a sports writer. That's your day job. This is not just you speaking out. Black Lives Matter. This is not you speaking out. This is you putting your career on the line in this book because you need access to all these people to do your job. What made you finally say, okay, I can totally do this? Or was it just not even a question? I've just got to do it.
It was never a question. I actually wanted to write this book starting like 4 years ago when this first happened. The minute Colin Kaepernick took a knee, he's playing for the 49ers. He starts protesting silently by taking a knee. The minute he did that, I was like, I'm going to be writing extensively about this. And I wrote a lot about the entire protest movement while I was at Bleacher Report. And then I covered it so closely, it just became sort of a natural thing to write a book about it. And the thing that fascinates me the most about this whole subject is how it's really 2 things. One, they took the most sort of peaceful, benign, calm gesture that you can take, which is just taking a knee. And that led to the second thing that fascinated me about it was how it became part of the political discourse, how it was taken from a protest about social injustice, about systemic racism, about how the police treat Black and brown people. It went from a simple gesture about that to Donald Trump calling NFL players sons of bitches and turning it into an entire sort of anti-movement. And it generated hatred towards these guys that I did not see coming at all. But the best part about the book is just how these guys stood against it and how they stuck to their principles and how it was never about against the police. It was never about against the military or against the flag. It was never about any of that. It was just a simple gesture drawing attention to what was happening in America. And now, that was 2016 when it started. 4 years later, we now know how right they were. I mean, most of us already knew they were correct, and the actions they were taking were justified. But now we know, after what happened with George Floyd, what they were doing was correct. It was right. They were right all along. So I was always going to write this book and sort of show that arc of how it starts with this simple gesture, a very brave gesture, I think, and how it went all these years later into something else and where it ended up.
What you just said, there's like 5 ways I want to take it, but one was that I saw an why am I going to forget his name? I just saw an interview with Anthony Anderson, from Blackish, and you were talking about that scene. There's a scene in one of the ending bits where they're covering the Trump election, and they're making a comment about the fact that he's not reacting the way they thought he was going to react to Trump winning, and he gives this insane, passionate, not insane, this really energy, passionate speech, just saying, look, don't be mad at me for not being surprised. This is how it always goes. This is always the thing. This is the same story, and you're just catching up to us now that you're thinking, oh, I'm woke, but you weren't seeing it. And to me, this book says that. And your point about like likening, Cap taking a knee in 2016 to the well, you didn't like that, so you get this.
Right.
People still don't seem to get that message, but you had to cover this in 2 different ways in this book. Of course, you had to cover it as a sports guy talking about the business elements and the career elements of this, but also as this is an important moment in time that needs to be covered in a bunch of ways.
Yeah, it was the decision to write it was. It was really more about when do I stop writing it, because I could have probably took another 5 years to write this, because so much stuff happened and so much stuff kept happening. And I mean, unfortunately, you would just have another tragedy, another incident. But in the end, I think to hit on what you're saying, in the end, what you saw was sort of, for the most part, a very unified country full of people of all ethnicities, types, races, protesting, coming together as one. Not perfect, but you saw across the country, black, white, brown, everyone understanding, maybe too late, maybe a little late, but finally sort of a lot of people, tens of millions of people getting it and understanding what, frankly, people who look like me have been talking about for decades, our entire lives, what Colin had been talking about for 4 years. People finally just hit them right in the face. And it's like, they're right. Okay, so now what do we do? And I think that's one of if I could do the next book would be, where do we go from here? Because now this is a very important moment in our country's history. We may go to a new president, and we may go to a new era. And how do we transition from some of this stuff that's been pretty ugly at times into a more unified country, a better place? And so that's the next book, I think. That's the next part of the story, is this transitioning to really a country where we all agree and we all want, where everyone is much more together and unified. That's the next big challenge, I think.
Well, that's a heck of a challenge. So I think that there were divides that we didn't realize were there. And now it's almost like someone's put a lever in and made them as big as possible. How are we going to bridge that once, whatever happens, how are we going to bridge that, I guess? What goes in your next book? Let's give us a sneak preview. Yeah,
that's an excellent point. I hate when people act like they know and they don't really know. Like, what happens next depends really a lot on what happens in November. I mean, I think it really depends on who becomes the next president, because I think you would have, if you have someone at the very top who is saying, we all should work together, we're all Americans, and that's the primary message from top to bottom, and you say that all the time, and you tell people that all the time, there's always going to be people who oppose that, but they're the minority. The majority of people want a united America. They love the country when it's full of people working together. So if you have an administration, that's their main message moving forward, and that's what they do, and that's how they live, and it's exemplified just in the Democratic ticket. I mean, white guy, biracial woman. So that sort of tells you their message from the get-go. If that message stays intact for the next 4 years or 8 years or however many years, it makes it easier for that transition to happen that I'm talking about. If it's not that, it's going to be much more difficult, to say the least. So I think what you saw with Colin Kaepernick, with these NFL players, was that they were attacked from the very top, and the very top sent a message that they were un-American. And that, I hate to say it, what Trump did worked. I mean, to some degree, it worked. It caused a lot of people to see them as protesting things they weren't protesting. So as we move forward, if you have people who say, I understand, I may not agree with it, but I understand, I see you, and let's work together, that's a completely different message that can change everything. I mean, words matter. One of the things we've learned these past 4 years is how much words matter. What you say matters. How I see you, how you see me, how we relate to one another, how we talk to each other really makes a distinct difference. It's not just words. It's not just talk. Things you say and how you, and if you hear me or not really matter. So if we have people at the top who believe that and believe that words matter, like togetherness, they matter, then you can really change things quickly, I think.
Heidi wants to know, we now genuinely get it, or at least I think see the issues that maybe people just were blind to before, not having been directly affected. Do you feel that we're on a path to racial equality? That's a big ask, Heidi. I mean,
boy, that is a huge question. That would take like 5 hours to answer. But since I don't have a few minutes, I would say
just do your best, Cliff notes.
I'm sitting here trying to be invisible, so I'm like, no.
Right, exactly, right.
Yeah.
Are we on a path?
But Mike, I think a lot of people thought we were on a path to racial equality, but we didn't realize there were all these biases working in the system against a whole group of people. Like, we really didn't know. I think there's a lot of people that were like, things are okay, and then it becomes very apparent as those biases surface. Not okay.
Yeah. Not to get too far into the political weeds, but like one of the things that happened with the election of Barack Obama was, for a lot of us, especially people that look like me, it was just one of the most important moments of our lives, and one of the best moments of our lives, and one of the greatest things that we've ever seen. But for other people, thankfully not the majority, but for a lot of other people, that was a scary moment, because to them it represented the changing racial dynamics of the country. That now you had an African-American man as president, to them it meant less power. And so when Trump came in, he played off of that. And I think what he's done, it will have repercussions for decades that we'll be digging out from under. But the thing that I've really learned during the Trump era and during my life and during the Obama era is that there's more like-minded, decent people who want the country to go the right way than there are the other people. So to answer the question, are we on this path? I think the answer is yeah. But like everything with humankind, everything with people, it's going to go like a seismograph. It's going to go up and down, and then I think eventually it will level out. I'm a hardcore trekker. I'm a nerd and a trekker, and I just think about that future, and I think that future is real. Where that future where human beings have put all of our problems behind us, we don't fight each other anymore, and we become explorers of space.
We're like one alien invasion away, Mike.
We could do this. We had a good alien invasion.
Aliens don't want us now. They're gonna leave us alone. We're good. We're fine. They've gone elsewhere. They're like, these guys are screwed up. We don't want anything.
They're like, they have Walmart. We could come back there.
Yeah.
All right. I have one last absolutely. Now I have to ask you a Trekker question. My favorite now is Discovery. I put all the other ones behind now. It's Discovery for me, and the reason it's Discovery, Captain Michael. I mean, whatever. She's great, but Pike. I thought Christopher Pike was such a great kind of rework of that, and I feel like none of the other shows can compare. I tried to watch Enterprise the other day. It didn't work out. Like that series that was in between them all that sort of looked like an Aerosmith song. That was no good. But I never would have pinned you for a Trekker kind of guy. That's fascinating.
First of all, you got to give Enterprise a chance. Have you watched it all?
No, I know. I watched like 5 episodes when I was out.
All right, you got to watch the Xindi season. Just watch that, okay? That is really good. All right, watch that. Discovery is fantastic. It sort of embodies everything about that I love about Star Trek. One, it has just the diversity in it, and the message of the future being a place where human beings have worked everything out, where we're good, and we've moved on to other challenges, and we've put all of the ugliness parts of us behind us, and we've conquered that mostly. And it's also, honestly, it's just like really good science fiction. It's just good storytelling. Right. It's fun to watch. It's really well acted. That lead actor, she is fantastic. I mean, she's really good. So yeah, you picked it, but don't give up on Enterprise. Watch, I promise you.
All right, I promise. I'll give it a look, but I also apologize for just like whipping right field 90 degrees into Star Trek. But yeah, it's a thing. Anyway, look, we're gonna grab Barry Eisenberg back.
Star Trek ever.
Yeah, never apologize for Star Trek. I like that. Oh my gosh. All right. So see brogan.me/Mike. Pick up this book. You really need to pick up this book. My dad also said, because I'll shout him out, seeing as it's family show today. This election is important, but we need to be together on this path for it to happen. Equality needs to be fought for, sadly. Absolutely. Oh, and then we just pushed Michelle's Star Trek button, evidently. TNG, DS9, and Voyager are my faves, in case you wanted to know. We had a Star Trek writer.
I did want to know.
We had a Star Trek writer on the other day, Lisa Klink. That was interesting. Okay, Barry.
Invite Barry back.
You did.
All right, Star Trek, where are you on this?
Are you a Trek guy, Barry?
Could you put me back in the green room?
No,
sorry.
You're Lex Luthor's dad. You have to like at least like a little bit of sci-fi.
Yeah. Yet another thing I failed at. No, I don't know why. Science fiction was never something that I connected with. Kind of like Jamie's football, and I feel like I'm missing something, and I apologize to those around me who want more of that. But now
I'm sorry, I don't have an opinion on this.
Yeah.
Start.
Wait, so what's your, I know what nerds do with their time, and I know what sports people do with their time. They're just nerds with different pants on. What does Barry Eisenberg do, like with your entertainment time? Do you like tie flies? Where do you binge?
Well, let's see. Some of the things that we would ordinarily do have been impossible. Like, my wife and I and the whole family, love to go to theater. That's really a powerful thing. We also really enjoy taking cooking classes. That's a lot of fun. So it's hard to do that virtually, but we've actually tried it. And totally we were taking a mozzarella cheese class and doing it online. And
the whole class on mozzarella cheese.
I have to tell you, and they sent out in advance, this long list of things that you should buy for it. And one of the things that was sort of buried on the list was like a thermometer that you can put into liquid so that you can check when the cheese is ready for the next step. And all of the other people in the class, and you could see everybody, much like this, you could see everybody, on the session. Everybody had all of the things, and it was all laid out, and we're sort of scrambling to get it together. And when they came to say, well, now you have to check the temperature, so well, how do you do that? And you could just see the absolute, this restrained effort on the part of the teacher who otherwise wanted to scream, like, how dare you waste my time and waste the time of the entire class by not getting all the right things. So she was saying things like, you could just sort of dip your finger into it and like estimate when it feels like 85 degrees. I don't know many people could do that. I don't have the scale. So anyway, it's one of those things. It's difficult to take.
She's like, you're not ready for cheese. You're not taking it seriously.
Yeah, you try.
Oh my gosh. I have no follow up to that. Just the face that woman must have made, that teacher must have made.
Stick your finger in the cheese, Barry. I need you to do it.
Well, you did point out one thing that has changed. I mean, Mike covers the sport space that has had to grapple with how they're going to deal with people in crowds and whatnot. And of course, teams having their problems where, the dynamic has this like extra shark in the water of, a disease that can knock a team out of its play. And Barry, you mentioned about theater and all that. What's your thoughts going forward, and what are you doing to kind of fill your gaps, such as it is now that we can't do some of the stuff we can't do? Mike can't travel as much, Barry can't go to his theater as much. What are you doing to fill the gaps, I guess, is my question. Mike, I'll start with you.
More Star Trek, thank you. You can move on.
I'm perfectly fine. I'm home. I'm good.
I think for me, it's been really more writing, more reading, but primarily just it's really been fun spending a lot of time with my daughter. And she's been, like a lot of people, been home from school, and she's doing school virtually. And that's been quite an experience, but it really has been, it's brought us, we were already close, made us a lot closer.
Nice.
So that's been fantastic, just being around her and hanging with her and watching her handle really what's been kind of a crazy, difficult situation for everybody. And she's 9 years old, and she's handling it much better than me. So that's been a big thing.
Amazing how different they are. I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, and my 12-year-old's like living his best life. Like online school is his dream because he can do all his little scratch projects. Yeah, he's thrilled. My older one is like a little more, he was looking forward to freshman year of high school, but they are who they are, and they like Star Trek.
Awesome.
Sorry, Barry, you're the odd man out on that one. You're not able to get to the theater and whatnot. You also just released a book there in the midst of this as well. What are you doing differently? How's that all working out?
Well, needless to say, like everybody else, this has been a really challenging time because of the nature of my work. All of this, I teach in a graduate program for the State University of New York, and all of our students work in healthcare. And I work, my background is in healthcare. So we are all sort of confronting this right on the front line, and it's been for so many people who work in healthcare, this has been just incredibly challenging in ways that a lot of us are experiencing, but even more so. I've had some of the students in nursing who have been talking about having to help families say goodbye to a loved one who's about to pass away. And so creating opportunities for the students to learn from one another, to be able to share stories, to be able to figure out what works, what might be things to avoid in terms of carrying out your professional responsibilities. So I've had to devote a lot more time to that in the past several months. But I'm also working on another novel right now as well. And I'd love to be able to finish that by the end of the year. Which year I didn't say, but I know I really don't think it's
that's like your 10th book, Chris.
Yeah, my 10th book will be done one of these times.
Yeah, right. Well, I know you have a whole portfolio.
Well, yeah, Mike has 9 books, I think, as well, though, right?
Yeah, 9. Yeah, I don't know what my it's gonna be. Yeah.
And then when you lose count, you're like, let me think about it.
I'll race you if you want. I mean, maybe that's how we get it written. I don't know.
No. You will win.
No, you wouldn't know. I've been not writing this book since 2015. I've written 900 pages that I've put in the old file.
See, but so you have written. You just didn't finish. There's a difference.
900 pages of not books. All right. Listen, we got to do person of the day really quick, and then I got to ask you the backpack question. So person of the day is sponsored by PubSite, pub-site.com. The person of the day today is our own Linda Lepecki over at LinkedIn. Linda and I have known each other for maybe 10 years. I hear you, Barry. I'm not into science fiction either, but also kids are resilient. That's what makes her a good
I can get behind kids are resilient, but the Star Trek thing, I feel like you haven't even given it a try.
It's a little twitchy. Well, remember, she's a Kirk and Spock era person. Maybe she didn't like, William Shatner. Person of the day entitles you to an apple just like that one. You just have to go to a store, buy it, eat it. It's your apple to eat.
Wash it first.
Wash it. All right. We have a backpack question. This question is really simple. It is just what goes in your backpack. And it is, the world's crazy. It's shifting sands. We don't know what's happening. You can't carry everything with you. You can only carry a little backpack. And this is for success for people going forward the next 5 years. They don't have to be any more visionary than that. What goes in your backpack? Barry.
It's such a good question. I think for me, it would be curiosity. Because I find that leads you to look around. It leads you to ask questions. It leads you to challenge assumptions that may have been sticking with you for a long time. That you start taking for granted. So curiosity allows you to challenge your own assumptions. So I think if I had one thing to take, plus maybe a little food if I was going to be gone for a day or so.
Mozzarella cheese.
Yeah, but but that aside.
I like curiosity.
That's what I would put in.
Okay. Mike Freeman, what do you got? What goes in the backpack?
So I can't put a person in the backpack because that would probably be illegal.
Wouldn't be the first time this week somebody has.
You, Mike.
Yeah. So since I can't put a person in, I'm going to put. I immediately thought of this because of what's happening around the world and in the country. I'm going to put these in. I'm going to put glasses in.
Oh, good, smart thought.
I feel like one of the things that's happening now is people are refusing to see that a fact is a fact, or a thing is a thing, or things that we used to take for granted that are truths. People are not seeing that. Conspiracy theories, how a mask has become not a mask, it's now something political. So I want to be able to see clearly, and I want everyone around me to see clearly. So whoever's with me has to bring glasses too, and maybe a sandwich. But
one thing, Mike, one thing.
Yes. All right. One thing, the glasses then. I was a little hungry, but I'll bring in the glasses so I can
go with Barry. He'll have cheese.
You're blind, baby. You're blind from the facts of who you are because you're watching that garbage. See, that's why you need glasses, right?
There you go.
That's my my co-entity Flava Flav from She Watched Channel Zero from Public Enemy.
People are excited for
those of you who are not into it. We had when you said, can I put somebody in the backpack, Kerry and I started laughing because we had a guest on Nikki Porche who said her company's called Buy From a Black Woman. And so we said, what are you going to put in the backpack? She goes, black women. And we're like, a bag full of black women?
Don't do it.
So then we started laughing. It was over. We couldn't stop.
Chris was disgusted with me. I couldn't, and she was no better. She started laughing because she realized what it sounded like, and she's like, "Well, I don't mean trafficking." I'm like, "No, you invite them into the backpack, obviously."
Those moments where you're the dad and the kids are upstairs for the sleepover, and you got to come up and knock on the door and shut the hell up. You got to go to bed. That was me on my own video show.
But the best part, everyone, was that Nikki answered first. So then I had to try and keep a straight face.
She tried to land this show. Speaking of landing the show,
lovely answer, and I couldn't.
She had a good, lovely answer. So listen, speaking about ending the show, I was thinking about it. People have been complaining about the way we end the show because I tend to